Tonight's confession is a quiet one. It doesn't start with shouting or betrayal. It starts with love. The kind of love that makes you pack boxes, sign a lease, and believe you're stepping into something better. But what happens when you move out for love and end up feeling more alone than ever? Have you ever made a decision that felt right in the moment, only to realize later it cost you more than you expected? This story isn't about villains. It's about choices, about hope, and about that heavy feeling in your chest when you realize love doesn't always mean happiness. The title of tonight's confession: moved out of love, but now I feel miserable. Take a breath, settle in, and let's step into it. The hum of the refrigerator is the only thing filling this kitchen now, and it's a sound I've grown to hate because it makes the silence louder. I'm sitting at the small, slightly wobbly wooden table we bought at a thrift store 3 months ago, staring at a lukewarm cup of coffee and wondering when this apartment started to feel smaller than it is. Outside the window, the Pacific Northwest rain falls in that endless gray drizzle, blurring the pine trees into soft shadows, and for a second, I can't even remember what the sun felt like back home. I traded constant heat, loud family dinners, and a career I spent 6 years building for this quiet. I did it because I believed love was something you had to physically move toward to keep alive. I thought if I closed the distance, everything else would fall into place. We met during a summer that felt cinematic, full of long-distance calls that lasted until sunrise and flights that drained our bank accounts but felt worth every dollar. Every goodbye at an airport terminal felt like something was being cut away from me. So when he asked me to move, to finally build a real life in his city, it didn't feel like a risk. It felt like relief. I packed my car, hugged my mother while she cried in the driveway, and drove 2,000 miles with a heart full of certainty that felt equal parts beautiful and terrifying. I told myself the scenery wouldn't matter as long as I had him. I thought love was strong enough to replace everything else. But standing here now, I realize love can't be the only oxygen in the room. The first month felt light. We drank wine out of coffee mugs and slept on a mattress on the floor. We laughed about how we finally made it. He looked at me like I was something rare he couldn't believe was real. But the excitement faded faster than I expected. He slipped back in his life here, 60-hour work weeks, Tuesday basketball games with friends he's known since kindergarten. And I had nothing waiting for me in the morning except a laptop, unanswered job applications, and a city that didn't know my name. The loneliness didn't hit all at once. It crept in quietly. It was the grocery clerk's polite smile that meant nothing. The damp air that never fully leaves your skin. The way the apartment felt heavy during the day, like the silence had weight. I started staying in bed longer, watching the light move across the ceiling, waiting for the sound of his key in the lock just so I'd have someone to talk to. But when he came home, he was exhausted. He wanted to relax, to tell me about his meetings, to feel at home. And I found myself pretending to be fine. Smiling a little wider, laughing a little louder, trying not to let him see that I was slowly disappearing. Last night, we sat on the couch, the television casting blue light across the room. He squeezed my hand and said, "I'm so glad you're finally here. Everything feels right now." Something inside me tightened. I pulled my hand away, pretending to reach for my water. "Yeah," I said quietly, "it's great." He looked at me, then really looked at me. "Are you okay? You seem quiet lately." "I'm just tired," I told him. And maybe that's true, but not in the way he thinks. I'm tired of missing my sister. I'm tired of the way it gets dark so early here. I'm tired of feeling like a stranger inside my own life. But I don't know how to tell him that loving him doesn't erase the loss of everything else. I've started resenting how easily he belongs here. He knows the streets, the shortcuts, the barista who already knows his order. He has history woven into this city. I have nothing but his address. When he talks about our future, buying a house, getting a dog, I feel this strange dizziness. I see years stretching ahead of me in gray tones, and I wonder if I'll ever feel rooted. This morning I walked to the park just to breathe. The air smelled like wet earth and pine. I watched a woman laugh while her dog ran across the grass, and she looked so settled, so certain. For a moment, I imagined getting in my car and driving east until the sky turned bright again. I pictured walking into my mother's kitchen, garlic and onions in the air, voices overlapping, warmth wrapping around me like it used to. But then I think about him. The way he tucks the blanket around me when he thinks I'm asleep. The way he used all his vacation days just to help me move. He is kind. He is good. He is the man I chose. And that's what makes this so hard. You can have the right person and still feel lonely. Love isn't meant to carry the entire weight of your world. It can't replace your friends, your career, your climate, your sense of identity. When everything else falls away, love starts to feel fragile, like a small flame you're trying to shield from the wind. When I came back from the park, he was in the kitchen making toast. The smell of slightly burnt bread filled the room. He smiled at me and said, "I was thinking we could check out that new record store downtown. What do you think?" For a second, I saw the man I would cross oceans for. And behind him, I saw the gray window, the unfamiliar cabinets, the life I left behind. I swallowed the lump in my throat and said, "Sure, that sounds nice. And maybe it will be. I'm still here. I'll keep applying for jobs. I'll try to make friends. I'll keep telling myself this city will eventually feel like mine." But at night, when the rain taps against the glass and the room goes still, I think about the version of me who existed back home, confident, surrounded, certain of who she was. Sometimes I wonder if she's still waiting for me somewhere, or if I left her on a highway miles away, sacrificed in the name of a love I thought would be enough. I close my eyes and try to remember the warmth of the sun on my skin, but all I feel is the cool draft from the window and the quiet reminder of exactly where I am. The record store was tucked into a basement lined with exposed brick, the air thick with the scent of old paper and damp concrete. He was thriving there, flipping through crates of jazz fusion with focused intensity, occasionally pulling out a sleeve to show me with a grin that felt boyish and familiar. I stood a few feet away, my hands buried deep in my coat pockets, feeling like a ghost wandering through someone else's memories. Every time he asked, "Do you remember this one?" I nodded, even when I didn't. I was getting good at nodding. It was easier than explaining that the music didn't sound the same here, that it didn't carry the same echo it once had blasting through my car speakers on roads I knew by heart. "You're doing it again," he said softly, sliding a record back into place. "Doing what?" I asked, my heartbeat slow and heavy. "Vacating," he said, finally turning toward me. The fluorescent light above us flickered, casting uneven shadows across his face. "You're standing right here, but you're miles away. I can feel it. The distance keeps getting wider. Is it the job hunt? Or is it us?" I looked down at a cracked plastic CD case in the bargain bin. "It's not us," I said, and the lie felt thick in my mouth. "Everything is just different. I don't know how to be the version of me that lives here. I feel like I'm wearing a costume that doesn't fit." "I'm trying," he whispered, stepping closer. I could smell his laundry detergent, the same scent I used to bury my face in during airport goodbyes. For a second, it felt comforting, and then it felt like a tether. "I'm trying to make this home for you. I bought the plants you liked. I plan things every weekend. What else am I supposed to do?" The question lingered between us, fragile and impossible. I couldn't tell him the plants were dying because this apartment didn't get enough light. I couldn't admit that going out every weekend felt like a performance. He had done nothing wrong. He had loved me the only way he knew how. "I just need time," I said quietly. The drive home was silent except for the steady rhythm of windshield wipers cutting through rain. At a red light, I watched a group of people laughing outside a bar, huddled beneath an umbrella. They looked effortless. I wondered if they were born here, or if they had moved for love too, and were simply better at pretending. When we got home, he walked straight to the bedroom, shoulders slumped in a way that made something twist inside me. I stayed in the living room, staring at the boxes we still hadn't unpacked. They were stacked in the corner like a monument to hesitation. I walked over and ran my hand along the taped seam of the top one. "Books and office," it read. I hadn't opened it because opening it meant settling in. It meant accepting that this was permanent. I sat on the floor, the cold hardwood seeping through my jeans. I scrolled through old photos on my phone until I found one from a backyard barbecue last year. The lighting was yellow and imperfect, and I was mid-laugh, holding a paper plate piled with food. I looked light. I looked rooted. A shadow shifted in the hallway. He stood there, leaning against the doorframe. "I don't think you're going to unpack those boxes," he said. It wasn't anger. It was realization. "I want to," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I really want to." "But you don't," he said gently, sitting across from me, the boxes between us like a quiet wall. "You're grieving. I thought I was bringing you into something new, but maybe I just pulled you away from something you weren't ready to leave." The honesty broke something open inside me. I cried then, not softly, not gracefully, but with the kind of sobs that come from holding your breath too long. He didn't reach for me. He stayed where he was, eyes steady, letting the truth exist between us. "I feel like I'm erasing myself," I managed to say. "I love you so much, but I don't recognize who I am here. I feel invisible." "You were never invisible to me," he said, his voice thick. "But I can't be your entire world. That's too much weight for anyone." Rain hammered harder against the roof, the sound filling the spaces between us. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt hollow. After a while, he stood and walked to the window. "If you stay," he said quietly, not turning around, "will you ever stop looking for a way out? Or am I going to watch you slowly disappear?" I didn't answer. The truth was sitting in my throat like something sharp. He walked toward the bedroom. "Go to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." As he passed the small table near the door, I noticed his keys lying there, and beside them, a folded piece of paper. I picked it up. It was a printout of a job opening back home. He must have found it. He must have known. The ink was slightly blurred from the damp air. He had known before I did. He had just been waiting for me to say it. I sat there holding the paper, feeling the weight of the choice pressing down on me. If I took the job, I would be saving myself and losing us. If I stayed, I would be saving us and slowly losing myself. I looked toward the bedroom where he was lying in the dark. Then I looked at the seal boxes in the corner, still untouched, still waiting. I reached for the roll of packing tape on the floor. The sound of it tearing, sharp and final, echoed through the apartment, louder than the rain. The sound of the packing tape ripping through the quiet was sharp and violent, slicing through the night in rhythmic bursts that made my chest tighten. I didn't turn on the overhead lights. I worked in the dim, orange glow of the street lamp outside. My shadow stretched long and distorted across the hardwood floor. My hands trembled as I folded cardboard flaps and pressed the adhesive down firmly, each strip of tape sealing something I couldn't reopen. I wasn't just packing books and sweaters. I was packing the version of myself that had tried to survive here, the one who practiced smiling in the mirror, who rehearsed optimism, who kept saying, "Just give it time." The bed creaked in the other room, a familiar sound that once meant comfort, now heavy with something else. He didn't come out. He didn't ask what I was doing. That silence was louder than the tape. It filled the hallway, cold and endless. He knew. He had probably been awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the life we built unravel one box at a time. By 4 in the morning, the living room looked like a warehouse of regret. I sank down onto the floor, leaning my head against a stack of boxes, exhaustion settling deep into my bones. My eyes burned from dried tears. The kitchen looked skeletal now, stripped of warmth. The magnets from our first road trip still clung to the fridge, small, colorful reminders of time when the future felt like a promise instead of compromise. The bedroom door opened. He stepped out wearing his old gray sweatshirt, cuffs frayed, hair disheveled. He didn't look angry. He looked hollow, like something essential had been carefully removed. He filled a glass of water in the dark, stood there for a moment, staring at the mountain of cardboard. "So, well, that's it then," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "I can't stay," I whispered, and this time it felt like truth. "If I stay, I'm going to start resenting you. And I'd rather lose you now than hate you later." He set the glass down gently. "You talk about this like it's happening to you," he said, turning toward me. His eyes were rimmed red. "But you're the one holding the tape. You're the one deciding this." The word deciding hit hard. "It's not about whether," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "It's about having a life. I don't have one here. I wait all day just to feel real for a few hours when you come home. That's not living. That's surviving." He flinched. The room felt charged, like air before a storm. I would have moved for you, he said softly. If you'd told me sooner, I would have gone back. I looked at him, at his job, his friends, his roots, and I knew he meant it. But I also knew what that would mean. If you did, I said quietly, you'd become me. You'd be the one staring out a window, feeling lost. We'd just trade the loneliness. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence between us. He stepped closer, and for a second, I thought he would fight for us. Instead, he reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered against my temple. It felt like goodbye. I'm going for a drive, he said. I can't watch you leave. He grabbed his keys from the table, the same table where that job listing had been waiting. He didn't mention it. He didn't say he'd known. The door opened. Cool morning air rushed in. Then it closed. And just like that, I was alone. I carried the boxes down to the car one by one. The sky was bruised purple, dawn breaking slowly through heavy clouds. The neighborhood was silent, indifferent. I packed the trunk until the car sagged under the weight of everything I was reclaiming. When I slid into the driver's seat, my hands rested on the steering wheel for a long moment before I turned the key. The apartment light was still on. From the outside, it looked warm, inviting, like nothing had fractured inside those walls. I pulled away. The tires hummed against wet pavement as the city slowly faded behind me. For the first hour, I felt nothing but adrenaline, a numb, vibrating energy carrying me forward. When the sun finally broke through the clouds and touched the dashboard with pale light, I reached toward the passenger seat for my water bottle. My hand brushed against something small and cold tucked into the side pocket. A silver picture frame. Inside was a photo from that first summer. We were laughing, sunburned, looking like we'd won something rare. Taped to the back was a note in his cramped handwriting. I hope you find the sun again. Don't look back. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. I was going home, back to heat, to noise, to familiarity. But as I crossed the state line, a heavy realization settled into my chest. Leaving wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was knowing that the man I loved most would wake up tomorrow in a place that had broken me, and he would have to learn how to live there without me. The highway stretched out ahead, endless and uncertain. And for the first time, the open road didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a question, one I was finally brave enough to answer, even if I didn't know what the answer would cost. The transition from the damp, endless green of the north to the sun-bleached browns of the Midwest was slow, almost punishing. For 3 days, I lived on gas station coffee and the stale, recycled air inside my car. The further I drove, the more the atmosphere changed. The humidity lost its grip, replaced by a dry heat that pressed against the windows like it was trying to get in. I expected triumph when I crossed the final state line, some cinematic swell of relief. But when the familiar water tower near my mother's house appeared on the horizon, I didn't feel victorious. I felt like a ghost returning to a place that had already learned how to exist without me. I pulled into the driveway at sunset. The porch paint was still peeling. The yard still smelled like dry grass and dust, and the neighbor's jasmine drifting across the fence. The scent wrapped around me the second I opened the car door. Childhood, safety, familiar ground. My mother ran out of the house, apron still tied around her waist. When she hugged me, she smelled like vanilla and the detergent I used to bury my face in before school. "You're home," she whispered, her voice thick with relief. "You're finally home." I cried, but not for the same reason she did. I had reached the place I'd been longing for, and the hollow space inside my chest was still there. It had just changed shape. The weeks that followed were full of welcome home dinners and careful questions. My old bedroom waited for me exactly as I left it, but it felt smaller now, like a costume I had outgrown. I returned to my old job, or at least a version of it. My coworkers smiled with curiosity and sympathy, asking about the big city. I answered with polished stories that didn't say much at all. I was back in the sun, back in the noise, back in a version of life that was supposed to make me whole. But at night, when the crickets pulsed outside my window and the house settled into silence, I would reach for my phone. I'd stare at his name in my contacts, thumb hovering over the call button. We had agreed on space. Space feels gentle when you say it out loud. In reality, it stretches thin and sharp. I wondered if he had moved the boxes I left behind. I wondered if he walked around them like there was something sacred or something broken. The turning point came on a Tuesday, a completely ordinary Tuesday. I was standing in the grocery store, the same one where the clerks greeted me by name, holding a carton of eggs. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, warming my shoulders. Everything was exactly as I had wanted it. And then I noticed a display of raincoats in the seasonal aisle. A strange ache hit me. I missed the gray drizzle. I missed the fog rolling through the trees. I even missed the hum of that refrigerator I swore I hated. That's when I understood something that made my stomach drop. I hadn't been running from a city. I had been running from growth. I thought going back would restore the old version of me, but she didn't exist anymore. She had disappeared somewhere between packing tape and goodbye notes. You can't return to a self you've already outgrown, and you can't expect a place to heal something that was never about geography. I walked out to the parking lot, heat rising off the asphalt in shimmering waves. I sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, heart racing, and I called him. The phone rang 3 times. Sarah, his voice was cautious, soft. I'm in the sun, I said, my voice trembling. It's 95 degrees. Everyone knows my name. Silence lingered between us. I could hear faint rain on his end. Is it everything you wanted? He asked. No, I whispered. It's just another place. I thought the map was the problem. I thought if I changed the setting, I'd change the feeling. But the quiet followed me. I ruined us because I was scared of sitting still long enough to figure out who I was becoming. What are you saying? He asked, breath catching. I'm saying I made a mistake, I said. Not by loving you, not by leaving, but by thinking happiness lives somewhere specific. I chose the version of myself that felt safe. And I don't know if we can fix what I broke, but I needed you to know the sun isn't brighter without you. He didn't give me a dramatic answer. He didn't tell me to come back. He didn't tell me to stay away. He just stayed on the line. 2 people breathing across 2,000 miles. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. I looked older, not in years, but in understanding. I had moved for love and felt miserable. I had moved for myself and felt empty. The mystery was never about which city held my happiness. It was about whether I was brave enough to build a life that didn't require escape routes. I put the car in gear, but I didn't drive home right away. I just drove. The road stretched ahead like a long, black ribbon. For once, I didn't need to know where it ended. I just needed to stop running long enough to face what I had done and who I was becoming. I'm telling you this because sometimes finding yourself costs more than you expect. Sometimes you get exactly what you thought you wanted and realize the trade was heavier than you understood. And sometimes the hardest part isn't choosing love or choosing yourself. It's learning how to hold both without losing either. If you've ever packed up your life and called it freedom, only to realize you were running from something quieter, something inside you, then you understand. Sometimes we think the answer is a new city, a new sky, a new version of ourselves. But healing isn't geography. It isn't sunlight or rain. It isn't North or Midwest. It's courage. It's accountability. It's staying still long enough to hear your own heartbeat. If this story felt familiar, if it sounded like a chapter you've lived, you're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, you're not lost either. This is just one story. There are more roads to travel. I'll see you in the next one.